Hi there, this is Miss Valentine, and you are watching the 1.2 notes on the environment and society. So, the big theme for us today is talking about how society, human civilization, interacts with the environment. And one of the main topics within this topic, or within this concept, is the tragedy of the commons. What it is, it's just saying that there's a conflict between our interests, so us as individuals, our interests, and the long-term welfare of society or for the environment. The example that is given, and this was an idea that came out, I believe it was in the early 1900s. I could be wrong on that, but it's an old idea that just means that we have this common area that we all share. In terms of environmental science, that is the entire Earth is our commons. But if you think of something as small as our school, we have a commons, which is just a cafeteria that we all share. So a commons is just a place where people all share that resource. In this tragedy of the commons example that has been proposed, the individual in a town will put as many animals in the commons. So we'll think of it as like a common field that the entire town shares. So an individual will put as many as they can because they can make the most money from the more animals they have. Now, because there were so many animals, though, too many animals graze on the grass, they eat the grass, and it destroys the area, it destroys the commons. So because this grass is destroyed, no one can raise animals on the commons anymore. The entire community suffers from it. And this is kind of what's going on with the tragedy of the commons when we talk about the entire Earth. I had you guys watch the Easter Island video last week about how Easter Island used up all these resources to build these huge statues and build up their civilizations, but they completely destroyed their island and then they had nothing left. So this is an example of the tragedy of the commons, Easter Island is. So now, if you were to replace those commons with closed fields, so you divide up the land and then each farmer gets their own area that they can put their animals. Now, the owner is not going to put more animals on that land than it can support. They're going to be careful not to put too many animals there so the grass isn't destroyed. So this is a picture on the left here is showing if everybody shares the same space and everyone puts as many sheep as they possibly can on that space, the grass is gone and then none of these sheep will live. You can't use that land anymore. But if you divide it up and give individuals their own space, then the farmer is more likely to take care of that space and not destroy the grass, not destroy the environment. Just think of it, compare it to the commons in our school. Like if everybody had their own lunch room that they had to go to and they were the only one cleaning it up, the only one taking care of it, you would treat it a lot better. You wouldn't just leave it trashed all the time. So the main point is that someone or some group has to take responsibility for maintaining something or it would become depleted. If you think of our public parks, any of the parks in Westerville or our metro parks, we pay somebody to take care of that. So our taxes go to paying people to take care of our public lands. And so if it's not individually owned, it at least needs to be put in the care of someone individually or an organization specifically using tax dollars. So we can apply this concept that private ownership makes better use of the land. You can apply this to all of our commons today, the natural resources that we have. If it's independently owned, it's more likely to be cared for. However, a lot of the time, resources in our environment are shared by everyone, and so it's hard to stop people from taking advantage of those resources and overusing them. All right, so here's our first pit stop today. Why is individual land ownership more beneficial to the environment than a common land ownership? Please make sure you type or write a complete sentence in the pit stop space and pause the video here to take a moment to answer this. So an important idea when it comes to the environment and society is this law of supply and demand. It's a law of economics, and it just basically says that the more in demand something is, the higher the value it's going to be. You guys may have noticed over the past several months during the COVID pandemic, prices in grocery stores have gone up. I know your parents probably have noticed, but the increase in needs for foods and groceries and things like that have gone up because the value, people need it more. The demand is more. But the price of gasoline or fuel at the fuel pump has gone down because the demand for fuel has gone down. So world oil production is an example that's being affected right now by the COVID-19 pandemic. As less people are traveling, less oil is being used and there's less demand. That means the value of it decreases. So supply and demand just determines how expensive something is going to be depending on how much people are demanding. A lot of times when we are considering whether or not to do a specific environmental action or a building or any sort of thing that would impact the environment, we try to look at both the cost and the negative effects that could happen as a result of doing something. So, for example, if they want to build a new apartment complex, but they would have to destroy a forest or a wetland to do that, it's important to look at the environmental costs that are associated with putting up that apartment building. So this cost benefit analysis considers, is it worth building that apartment building if the environmental cost is too great? And those environmental costs do have consequences for us humans. It's not like it's just, oh, that'll hurt the environment. Don't worry about it. Nothing will come of it. If we destroy a wetland, then our streets could flood. There are reasons why you would want to consider the environmental cost because it does affect us as well, aside from it just being the right thing to do. So a cost benefit analysis often will report what is best for whoever is doing the analysis. So the industry cost benefit analysis might have a different result than if a community does a cost benefit analysis. So pollution control measures like restricting greenhouse gas emissions might be too costly for the oil industry. So their cost benefit analysis would look different than a community that is affected by the pollution from a cost benefit analysis that are affected by the pollution from that oil industry. So oftentimes if you look at a cost benefit analysis, you have to figure out who's doing the analysis to actually figure out, okay, is this biased or not? But oftentimes a community-based cost benefit analysis is more concerned with society than it is with what happens to the industry that is causing the pollution or causing the environmental destruction. All right, so here is our next pit stop. Why do we do a cost-benefit analysis when making decisions about the environment? So again, please write a complete sentence. You can use my sentence starter there and pause the video to take a moment to write that. All right, another big concept that we're going to talk about this year in environmental science is the difference between developed countries and developing countries and how they treat the environment. So developed countries are countries that, like the US, I think we're actually going to go into this a little bit, like the US, have more resources. And then developing countries tend to have less resources. So they're just not as developed, not as industrial as more developed countries. So developed countries have higher incomes, slower population growth. Diverse economies just means you can get all sorts of different kinds of jobs in a developed country. In the US, there are so many different job opportunities for you. In developing countries, you have more agriculture-based communities, which means you are a farmer. You also might only have one industry that's in your area that you can go to work at. So having diverse economies is good if you want to have job options. We also have stronger social supports. And what do I mean by social supports? Well, you being in school is a social support. Taxpayers pay between $8,000 and $12,000 a year, depending on the district or the time period, to send you to school, just you to school. So that is a social support to make sure that you can read and write and think. So that is part of the reason why we have schools. We have that as a social support because we are a developed country. Other social supports would be like Social Security, welfare, food stamps. Um, there's Medicare. So we have all these different support systems that helps people out, including our entire society when it comes to public schools. Developing countries have lower average incomes. People might make a few dollars a day or even less. They oftentimes are agriculture based, so they focus on farming. And then they have rapid population growth. So we'll talk a lot more about that later this year, but the differences between living in a developed country versus a developing country are very different. Your life can be completely different based on where you live. Now, the two root causes of environmental problems that we're going to study this year are first, human population growth. Our population is growing so quickly that it's hard for the local environment to support it. And that's why we go all over the world and deplete other people's environment and other animals and trees and plants. We deplete other places because we need to support our lifestyle. We are using up, wasting, and polluting a lot of our natural resources faster than they can be renewed. If you did the ecological footprint web quest last week, there was a day called Earth Overshoot Day. I believe it was August 22nd this year. And that's basically the time when the Earth has used up all the resources that it's going to regenerate in a year. So by August 22nd, we had already used up all of our resources for the year, and now we're depleting the environment with all of the things that we do. Severely overpopulated areas will face a lot of problems if they're in a developing country. You'll see forests stripped bare for the resources or even just for firewood. You'll see poor topsoil because there's over farming. And then animals can be driven to extinction when you take away their habitat. So this can lead to malnutrition in humans, and that can be overnutrition or obesity and undernutrition or starvation, and then also disease. So anytime you have a large population overusing the environment, it eventually leads to negative consequences for society. Now, on Earth, developed countries like the United States, Australia, Europe, they are using much more of Earth's resources than the rest of the world. So developed countries like ours use 75% of the world's resources, and they only make up 20% of the population. So we make up 1 in 5 people in the entire world, but we use up 75% of the resources. So that's developed countries like the United States. This table is a really good comparison of different metrics or different things to measure between different types of countries. The US and Japan are developed countries, so you can see the lifespan is much higher than in these developing countries. Population growth is much lower than it is in these developing countries. And just the personal wealth. I mean, in the US, the gross national product per person, according to this time period, I think it was 2008, our country produces $29,240 worth of goods that would be used for you. But in Indonesia, it's only $640. So you can see all these differences that are very, very drastic when it comes to comparing developed countries versus developing countries. So take a moment to answer this pit stop question. How is the environment damaged in a developing country compared to a developed country? So in a developing country, what might happen? And in a developed country, what might happen? Go ahead and pause this video and hit play when you have completed this pit stop. So one of the big things that I want to help you with this year is thinking critically about the environment, about society, just thinking critically. I think it's one of the most important things that we teachers and we schools can teach you while you're here. It's important to know that there are people out there distorting and misleading the public based on where their passions are. And this is a huge problem with social media, especially. Don't believe everything that you see on social media or even out on the internet when you're doing research. It's important to know that other people can tell you false information. This is kind of an epidemic right now. We have a lot of false information out there, misinformation, a mistrust of science going on. And I think that is going to be something that 2020 is remembered for. So just recognize that scientific research, even science, can be misinterpreted or skewed to support a political point of view. So just consider that when you're looking at information that you're reading on social media or on the news. As you study the environment, try to listen to many viewpoints on a particular issue. And the most important thing, like I was just saying, is to investigate the source of the information. If there is no source given, then it's probably not a reliable source of information. If it's scientific research or something that's been supported by many different experts, then you can probably trust that source, that information. Gather all the information that you can before you make up your mind about something. It's always important to look at other viewpoints, even if you're feeling strongly in one direction, because what if something else might change your mind or might make you just understand where other people are coming from. So being able to listen to other sources is important, especially at this point in time. We seem to have an issue with listening to other sides. So get as much information as you can before you make up your mind. All right, so take another moment to answer this pit stop question. What does it mean to think critically when studying environmental issues? And pause the video until you are ready to move on. So we are hoping to, in this class, learn mostly about sustainability. That is the main theme, the main word of this class. How do we live in a way that the human needs are met so that our population can live forever, can survive forever on this earth? As of right now, who knows? We could go extinct just like every other species before us that has gone extinct. But could it be possible for us to live in a way that our species can survive forever here? That is a key goal of this class, of this subject's environmental science. Our current world is not sustainable. Developed countries like the US were using resources way faster than they can be replaced. It's funny, I can hear the garbage truck outside right now taking the trash away. It's kind of ironic, but anyway. So we need to come up with ways to be more sustainable. I actually hope to encourage you guys to consider studying sustainability when you go to college, because they do have college minors and just college majors, like entire study programs about sustainability. It's becoming such a big, important issue in our society today. It requires participation from us as individual citizens, so just being aware of environmental problems and how we can be more sustainable. But it also includes participation from industries and the government. So if people, not all people are going to be aware of environmental problems or how to be sustainable unless industry and government force them to be or participate in it. So while it's important for us as individuals to participate, industry and government also have a big role to play when it comes to increasing our sustainability. All right, check out this picture. Another dam photo, another dam photo for you to look at. Did I say that right? Anyway, so cool picture of the other Hoover Dam. I think I showed you guys a picture of our Hoover Dam in Westerville. This is the Hoover Dam that is out west. I think it's in Nevada. I could be wrong. That's really bad. I don't know that. All right, guys. So you are writing a 5-sentence summary about this section. Make sure you are reading through your entire notes and drawing out important key points. You do not need to write what I learned today was. You can just state things, state the important facts. That's what I'm looking for in your 5-sentence summary. If you have any questions, let me know. And thank you for joining me today.